What's going on, people? Jordan here, back with another tutorial. Today we're going to be looking at frequency modulation to create soft harmonies, okay? Soft or smooth harmonic sounds. Again, I feel like there's a massive hole in the sound design field when it comes to making really soft, paddy sounds that can just kind of like make your beat R&B, or I don't know, it depends what you're going for. As promised, we're going to be looking at frequency modulation today, which I find is the easier way to make these kinds of harmonic sounds. And what we're going to be doing is we're going to explore what frequency modulation is. We're going to be exploring how to use it and how to use pitching to achieve certain sort of harmonies and things. And I think Toxic Biohazard is a brilliant synthesizer to use, because you get 6 oscillators which you can apply frequency modulation to really kind of complicate a sound and make it sort of how you want it to be. Okay, and it offers unison at the top here, which is always good for softening the sound even more. It has a simple chorus, a simple delay, and you can change these to whatever you want them to be as well. And there's a really nice EQ here, so we could just EQ our sound in Toxic Biohazard, and we can apply any further EQs as we did in the last episode, using things like Fab Filter and parametric EQ, etc., etc. So to start, let's just open up our filter, parametric EQ, and let's just look at what we're playing. So it's a pretty simple melody. It has a sadness to it. Kind of sounds like someone is like complaining about something, and that's kind of what I was going for. I could imagine, let's say, like a rapper kind of rapping about something kind of dark, has a dark theme to it. So the reason we have the EQ open, because like this, I wanted to show you this part here. Let me just get the magnifier so you can sort of see what I'm looking at. Okay, so when it's open, you should be able to zoom in. Yeah. So of course, parametric EQ shows you exactly what each frequency is trying to achieve. So we've got the sub here, the bass here, the low and the mid here, high, mid, PRS, and treble. I'm not too sure what these ones mean, but I can always Google it another time. But what we're focused on, we're not really focused on these two here. We're actually focused on the high, mid, and low. This is where harmonic sounds are made. And we kind of want to understand sort of what these represent in some way, in a way humans can understand. So low mid is representing like O, and then the upper portion of the low mid is representing like E, and then the mid and this part here is representing like R, and then the high mid is like the really strong R sounds that would sort of give that voice to your sounds. And when you're making a soft pad, what you're trying to, or a soft harmony, what you want to do is you want to establish exactly what the sound is trying to represent. Okay, so that's the first important thing. Secondly, frequency modulation. What is it? I like to think of frequency modulation as multiplying waves by themselves. So you can imagine it in this way. It's like 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, 64, 128, 256, etc., etc. That's what you're essentially doing. That is what frequency modulation does. It adds or multiplies the wave by itself. So, for example, if we keep our EQ open, close this, and we simply frequency modulate the sine wave on top of itself, what you're going to get is you're going to get the harmonic series. To do that in Toxic Biohazard, here is our frequency modulation section, and we can frequency modulate 1 to 1. So we can multiply the wave by itself, and let's see what happens in our EQ. So I just want to move this to the side so you can see. If you keep adding sine waves onto themselves, you get a saw wave, of course, which is why it sounds like a saw wave. And because the sine wave is just one harmonic, the volume of each reoccurring waveform is lower. So if we just compare a sine wave to a saw wave, here is the sine wave frequency modulation. Cool. And let's grab the saw wave, which I believe is right here. And we're going to turn off the frequency modulation. Yep, so let's go back to the sine wave again and turn it up to about 30-ish. In sound design, we call this kind of saw wave a soft saw. A soft saw literally is a saw wave where its higher peaks have been cut off. And we use soft saws to make soft pads, of course, by applying unison. So let's add some unison. Okay, so that is one example of simplistic frequency modulation. You can make soft saws. But there's so much more to frequency modulation that we haven't yet seen. So let's see what else we can do. Firstly, what we're going to do is we're going to just have a look at this sine wave here. I'm going to turn off the frequency modulation. We're going to turn off the unison. And let's just have a look at the presets of the sine waves that come with Toxic Biohazards. So we have the, let me turn the mix up for this. We have the simple sine wave, but we also have some other ones. This sine wave here, if I just play one singular note, it has another harmonic, but the second harmonic is louder than its bass counterpart. So what that means is that the sort of the higher pitch is higher than the lower pitch, and it increases the presence of R in our sound. Okay, so let's have a look at the next one. And it's doing the exact same thing. It's basically adding a harmonic at a higher pitch or a higher amplitude. And remember, it's all about amplitude and frequency. So the amplitude of the higher frequency is higher and it adds the distinct R sound. So if we do the same thing and we frequency modulate our sine 2 wave over itself, and add some unison, can you hear the R? Because of course you'd hear it because the R portions in the mid are being emphasized. Have a look at the mids here. Okay, I'm going to open up Fab Filter, or rather Span actually, and we can see that in the mid section, the pitch is already loud. So let's make this as big as possible by doing that. And as you can see, the R portions of the mid and upper frequencies are being emphasized. Okay, so we already have a very good bass ground of a sound here, and you could simply take this and apply some EQing to really sort of get what you're looking for. A little bit of release, reducing the sustain a little bit as well. Let's add like 600 milliseconds of release. We'll bring the sustain down, decrease the decay, and add a little bit of attack. That's a nice sound. The second thing we can do is we can further increase the presence of those upper harmonics by adding a simple root sine note, but we're going to increase the pitch of it so that it's occupying the mid-range. And we're going to frequency modulate that. So that's going to be an octave up. We're going to frequency modulate that over number 2. So number 1 is now oscillating, frequency modulating number 2. Sweet. And then we can perhaps even add something with a little bit of grit, like a triangle wave, for example. Let's find that, a triangle wave. And we can sort of apply that at an even higher frequency and just experiment a little bit and see if we can even further increase the presence of the R sound. Another thing you can do, of course, is you can add a bass, but you can use frequency modulation for the bass. So you can sort of see how frequency modulation is really useful. So we can just pitch it down by 12 and we can apply that as well. And we could just fiddle with the knob so we can get exactly what we want. And so by using frequency modulation, we can essentially create soft pads without having to necessarily EQ everything out as you would with a saw wave. This I've only used like 4. You can use all 6 if you want, and sometimes if you just want a really simple sound, you can just remove them. Maybe keep the ones you want. Maybe we transpose it down one. We can try and fix the peaking. That's crazy. What does it sound like? And of course, if we look at it in our filter, what we will see is that it's a nice, smooth, paddy sound. Those upper frequencies are mostly just adding the grit to it. But you can always low pass them out. So that's one example of frequency modulation. We're going to do another one because why not, right? So let's add another instance of our Toxic Biohazard. We're going to just set it to default. And in this case, what we're going to do, same kind of deal, same kind of system. We're going to start with a tri-plow. And if we look at the tri-plow in the filter, let's see what it looks like. So essentially, it's just a triangle wave. Let's see what we can get with this sound. And I'm just gonna add in those upper harmonics again. At a high pitch. And max unison. And chorus. And going for like a super saw. So a lot of harmonics. Let's choose the root note we want to play in. We're playing D because we're playing in D. So why not? So the poly is max. And then let's put the EQ on it. And let's start removing some of the harmonics so we can get a cleaner sound. All I want to do is I want to remove the harmonics that are adjacent. So we're going to need some pretty strict bands here. So what I'm doing here is I'm applying a comb filter, okay? The objective of a comb filter is to remove unwanted frequencies. With comb filters, what you can do is by removing these unwanted frequencies, you can essentially make it sound even more pleasant and harmonic. A little bit of space modulation, add a deep chorus to it. This is probably one of my favorite choruses, actually. Some vintage reverb to make it sound really ancient, like you're in some kind of fucking cave or some shit, you know what I'm saying? Sounds really nice. We're gonna remove the whistling. It's just another comb filter, basically. I wanted to see what they would sound like together, but they don't really match. They're so like diametrically opposed to one another, if you know what I mean. A little bit of gain so we can hear it properly. You can see how the peaks are more isolated now. By adding another instance of fat filter, we can try and really isolate what's making the whistling. And you will notice that the whistling slowly disappears. At this point, I kind of heard this really pleasant sort of mid harmony, which I think I'm going to add in right now. I was just like really listening deeply to the sound. And I could hear this nice sound that I wanted to emphasize. Hopefully you can hear it now. And the whistle's gone now. Now I'm going to widen the sound, make it fill your ears. It helps because you can pick out all the frequencies more easily. And now what I want to do is I want to make the presence of the mud even more pronounced. So I'm going to use a sine wave and I'm going to turn off the frequency modulation. And I'm just going to increase its output to maximum. Yeah, I did it on the LFO, but I meant to do it on the mix. And I realized that in just a second. And now the sound will transform. Gonna make the mud more present and have the upper frequencies more as noise. We're gonna see sort of the shape of that soon. First a little bandpass indent or crescent. That's sounding so beautiful now. So beautiful. Up the gain so we can hear everything. Okay, now take a look at this, guys. This is how you know you have a good sound, because you're going to see that your peaks are really spaced apart. So I'm just going to show you that now. Look at this. You can see that the peaks of each of these sounds are really emphasized. And then the white noise is what gives it that kind of like raining diamonds kind of vibe, you know? And that's mainly due to the comb filter. So what we're going to do in a second is we're going to completely remove the comb filter and listen to the sound in all of its richness, and then we're going to compare it to when it didn't sound we're going to compare it to when it sounds soft again. So yeah, it has that grit again. It doesn't have that softness that makes you feel like you're in a really serene environment. And now we're going to listen to it again when it's nice and soft. But yeah, guys, I hope you enjoyed the tutorial. Making these kinds of sounds is about trial and error, but ultimately it's about removing the frequencies you don't want, including the frequencies you do. And of course, frequency modulation really allows you to experiment and create very sort of pleasant harmonies by using the by utilizing the ability to include harmonics that are in the R range, etc., more specifically. Yeah, so stay tuned. We're going to be doing much more tutorials. We're going to be looking at all different kinds of sounds, like electric guitar sounds. We're going to be looking more at like 808s and how to make those really sort of be emphasized in music, etc., etc. So yeah, stay tuned. And yeah, I hope you guys have a wonderful day.